I never forget it, Ryan. I went to that bathroom and I said, Lord, I know this is it. I said, I know I got to go before this judge, but this judge only has the amount of authority that you allow him to have. I say, if it's your will for me to be locked up and put in prison, I'm okay with it, because it might be somebody in there that needs to hear about you. I say, but if it's not your will, whatever your will is for me in my life from this point on, show me.
And welcome to Miracles from the Hill podcast, where we share raw stories that display the anatomy of God's grace here at Miracle Hill Ministries. If this is your first time joining us, please subscribe. And of course, you can like, comment, and leave a review. To connect with us, visit our website linked in the description box. And now, here is our host, Ryan Dirk.
Greeting, faithful listeners. Welcome to the Miracles from the Hill podcast. We are here joined today by Roy Williams. Roy, how are you?
I'm doing well, Ryan. Good to be here this morning.
Oh man, we're excited to have you. So we're gonna jump into Roy's story, and we're gonna talk about this amazing story of how God chases us and how we hide from him, and then he chases us again, and how he redeems our lives. So Roy, give us just like a one sentence or two sentence synopsis of who Roy is today.
Roy is a changed individual because of the grace of God.
Okay, ooh, that's a good sentence. Man, we should all have that sentence, right?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to jump right in. We're going to go all the way back to the beginning.
Okay.
Tell us, where were you born? What was your childhood like?
Okay. I was born in a small town, Ryan, called Swainsboro, Georgia. Matter of fact, the town, they say, was so small, they have to import sunshine in it. But no, really, I come from this small town, the youngest of 9 children.
Wow.
And the thing about it is my father passed away when I was only 6 weeks old. And the thing that's so ironic about that situation is the fact that my mother told me she named all my other siblings, but my father named me after him. I was a junior. And 6 weeks later, he passed away of a massive heart attack.
So the 9th kid,
Yes.
he chose to name after him.
Yes, as if it was destined.
Yeah.
But he died at the age of 36 of a massive heart attack. And I didn't know my father had deceased until I was 7. And it was ironic because the way I found out was I had a bunch of friends that I was playing with, and every Friday, everyone would run home because Dad be bringing candy home from work. So I don't know why it took 7 years, but that Friday evening I ran home. We all ran. And I asked my mother, I said, Mom, when is my dad coming home from work? So all this long period of time I was thinking that he was working. And so I never forget that day, she took me in the living room, sat me on a knee, pulled out a picture that one of our family members had taken at the funeral with my aunt holding me in a blue knit baby suit next to his head in a casket. And she said, your father's not at work. He's in heaven with Jesus. And she said immediately I jumped off her leg, ran in the room and slammed the door, screaming and hollering, why didn't anyone tell me? Why didn't anyone tell me? And she mentioned these words. She said, I wanted to tell you, but I didn't know how to tell you.
So your siblings never talked about it either?
No. And see, the thing about it, it was only 4 of us who was in the home at the time, because I had 5 other brothers and sisters who was much older, who were living in Philadelphia, that I didn't even realize that, they were my sisters and brothers until they came home. So it was a big gap of age between me and my 5 other brothers and sisters.
So our whole life is a story about how we relate to the Lord.
Right.
So where was Jesus when you were a kid?
Well, I grew up in a Christian home.
Okay.
It was, my mother did not send us to church. She brought us to church. So the thing about it, my whole while of being in church, as I look back over it, I knew about Jesus, but I really didn't know Jesus. And I think that, matter of fact, after my father had passed, I would go to church, but I was angry and mad at God.
I think there's a lot of people that grow up in a Christian home that know a lot about Jesus, but probably don't know him.
Right. And I was one of those individuals. Even though I would go to church, even though I would hear about the love of God and, you know, how Jesus died for us. But at that age, I just said, it can't be, because why did this happen to my father?
Were there other male role models in your life?
Of course it was. It was, I had I was an athlete. So growing up, I had a lot of coaches who instilled, and my mother told me something, Ryan, that same day. She told me that it's a lot of things that I can teach you, but I can't teach you how to be a man. Mm-hmm. So it was...
we could sit right there and you could preach on that
yes,
for another hour.
Yes.
Keep going.
Which was the truth.
Yeah.
And so I had male figures, but some of them were in the street, because that's where I was feeling like I fit in. I found people who I thought would show me the way. Now, my coaches, they would tell me the way to go, but growing up, you know, I would really, believe it or not, was a shy person, more introverted. But I studied hard in school because my whole ambition was to study hard, to do good, so my mom would never have to work as hard as she did for us.
So did you feel torn in two directions? Like you got the sports and the school on one side and the streets on the other?
Yes, and see, the streets was my way out to deal with the anger, the bitterness. I mean, it was just amazing how I tell people this now, and they look at me strange. It's amazing how I grew up resentful with God because of my father passing away, and then other things that happened in my life, getting involved with drugs and stuff. And if he was this loving, caring God, why did all these things happen? And I found out that God never forced me to do anything, and that if that was my father's time to go, it was his time to go, and wasn't anything to be done about it. But the streets was my way of dealing with that void, that emptiness, and that trauma. And it was the sports and academic was that what I was trying to overachieve in, to offset that. Because my mom, believe it or not, did not have a clue what I was doing in the streets.
Did mom get remarried?
She never remarried. Matter of fact, February the 29th marked the 19th anniversary of my mom's passing. So my mother was mother and father to me. And not only did I deal with that, with the death of my mom, I also was dealing with abandonment. I had anxieties or worrying about whether or not my mom was going to pass away. And then if that happened, what would I do?
Right.
So my way of dealing with that was through drugs.
So that started in high school?
That started in the 10th grade, because up until that point, I mean, I was focused because I wanted to be successful, make mama proud of me, while trying to deal with that emptiness at the same time. So I never forget, it was in the 10th grade, and it was one summer right after football practice. I had a bunch of guys who used to always come to me afterwards trying to entice me to go have a beer. And I'm like, nope, I can't do that. Because my mom would tell me stories. I couldn't say that my father was an alcoholic, but she said that he would work all during the week, but then on the weekend he would put it on, you know. So I couldn't see, he was more like a functioning alcoholic. But anyway, it started in the 10th grade, and it started out with one can of beer. And the feeling that can of beer gave me, from that point on, I started looking for those same people to go. And it continually to progress. And I didn't think anything was wrong with it, because that was the people I was hanging around.
Everybody was doing it.
Everybody was doing it, so it had to be okay. But I would do it away from home, so Mom would know what was going on.
So when did drugs enter the scene?
Drugs entered the scene around my junior and senior year, because that one can of beer wasn't giving me what it did the first time. So it continued to progress by the time. But see, now where my grades were important in the beginning, now they had become second nature.
Mm-hmm. But you kept playing sports?
I kept playing sports. Matter of fact, that's when it escalated. I started focusing more on my athletics and getting high than I was in the classroom. But I did maintain enough average to get a football scholarship. But by the time I got to the 12th grade, it had escalated to cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then I graduated from high school, went to college, first time away from home, and I never forget when I was in home, word would get back to my mom about what I was doing out there. And of course, I'm like, Mom, you can't believe that, becoming a master manipulator, liar, all the things that come with it. I said, they're just making all this stuff up. And I never forget her words. She said, I do not know what you're doing, but I can tell you this, to be sure your sins will find you out. I was like, whoa, but I'm not doing anything. So I went off to college on a football scholarship, okay? Down in
What'd you play? Somebody's going to ask me.
Well, in high school, I played quarterback, but when I went to college, I played defensive back.
Okay.
I went to Albany State University in Albany, Georgia. Started as a 4-year starter. So got to college, and, man, it was like I had freedom, And the thing is, as an athlete, it was as long as you was producing on the field, and I thought that was good at that time. I mean, I had it made. And I had another good friend of mine who his father had passed at an early age. We both were teammates. He was one of the running backs in high school. He ended up getting a scholarship to the University of Georgia. So we would go to school, and this time, money and cocaine for me was easy to get. It wasn't like it is now where they would randomly drug test you and all these things. This was like back in the 80s, 1980.
A lot of cocaine in the 80s.
Yes. I mean, flowing, Everybody was doing it. So it progressed. I had the money. I was able to learn how to swap tickets. I mean, just all the stuff that comes with it. But on Saturdays, be ready to play, I can even remember a point in my senior year at the beginning of the season that I got my nose broke. And they didn't want me to have surgery till after the season. And so all during that season, I never had to practice. I just had to be ready to play on Saturday. So we had a team physician. I'll never forget. His name was Dr. Shirley. I would go see Doc and say, Doc, my nose is hurting bad. Can you help me? Dr. Shirley didn't ask no questions. He just shot up Demerol. And so here I was. This was at the age of 19 and 20. Freebasing cocaine, getting shot up with Demerol. And then, but believe it or not, miraculously, still didn't have God nowhere, because I thought I was God by this time. All the prestige and everything that goes along with that, people thinking, everywhere you go, people want to talk to you. I didn't need a God. I had it going on, and started freebasing. Okay, managed to do enough to graduate with a BA in Business Administration. Still getting high. Went and started working in Atlanta. And by this time, it was in 1986. Graduated in 84, moved to Atlanta, still getting high. But in 1986, I got introduced to, I think, the most powerful drug that I had ever came across, and that was crack cocaine. Now, I didn't do any heroin or anything like that, but I heard some things about that, and I think the reason I didn't was because I was scared of needles. Right. Believe it or not, this big football player scared of needles. But,
unless I had Demerol.
Yeah, unless that was getting shot up with it, and I wasn't doing it. That's what I mean by. But anyway, that took me down the fastest. I ended up losing everything.
Right out of college.
Right out of college, 2 years out of college.
Did you get a job?
Got a job, started working in my field. But once again, money was a trigger. Every time I would get paid, I would spend every dime. Couldn't keep a job no longer than 6 months because, getting high, laying out, not showing up, but always would leave before I would get fired. But it was a pattern until it progressed so worse that I ended up in a boarding house. Then I couldn't even pay to be in a boarding house on the streets of Atlanta. And I never forget, man, my weight, I left college weighing 205 pounds. By this time, my weight had dropped to 170 pounds. I wasn't eating. I no longer was working.
Sure.
Couldn't work. And everything of value that I owned was gone. Got rid of it.
Were you still talking to Mom?
I would call Mom and tell her I was okay. Because I didn't want her worried about it. But she knew.
She knew.
She knew.
What about your siblings?
Well, I had a sister at home. My other sister and brother, they were married. They wasn't there. So it was just me and another sister and my mom in Swainsboro. So I never forget that night. I was smoking crack so hard, I thought I was going to die. And I never forget my mom instilled in us, it doesn't matter how low you are in life, you can always call on the Lord. And that came to me that night because I thought I was going to die. My heart was beating so bad. I'm like, Lord, just help me. Just help me. So I called my mom, and I said, Mom, come and pick me up, which Atlanta was probably about 3 hours away from my hometown. So she came, she picked me up, and when she saw the shape, because I wouldn't go home.
So this was your reality. Your hidden life was now exposed for Mom to see.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I wasn't that same baby boy that she knew. I had a lot of embarrassment, shame, guilt, because all that I wanted to try to accomplish to help her, I failed.
How old were you at this point?
At this point, and I think I was around 25 or 26, somewhere in that area. So she brought me home, and I said, I know what I need, Mom. I just need to get out of Atlanta. I need to get home. It's just too fast. So she brought me home, and everything that I had left that I owned, she put into a black Glad garbage bag. Only thing I had besides that was a pair of blue jeans and a T-shirt with Nike shoes on with no shoestrings, because I used the shoestrings to hold my pants up. So she came and she was crying. My brother, who was married at the time, drove her to come pick me up in the slums of Atlanta. Drove me back to Swainsboro. The whole while she was crying. I was like hurt. So got down there, she washed up the little things that was left, which wasn't many, fed me. I was sleeping. 30 days later, guess what happened? I went out in that small town of Swainsboro and found that crack again.
Wherever you go, there you are.
That's exactly right.
Doesn't matter where you are.
That was one of those geographical cures. I thought if I just go somewhere else.
Yep.
But I found it there and started that cycle over again. And this was the first sign from God that I was heading in the wrong direction that I didn't take heed to, because I had a praying mama. I went back to my alma mater for homecoming because I was a member of a fraternity also. So when we got down there, we was on the top floor of the Sheraton, and I never forget, we had the whole floor, just a lot of partying. Mm-hmm. And I got into one of my frat brothers' car to leave. And as I was going, all I remember is it was a 5-speed Toyota Celica GT. Nice car, like a 19, I guess it was late '89 model. Sharp car. But it wasn't mine. It was his, because I didn't have it. But anyway, I got in there and I was driving. And the next thing I know, when I came to, I had ran into the back of a truck up at the top of an exit ramp. I went into a blackout and total lost this car. Okay, and so had to end up helping him get another car.
Sure.
But I jumped out of his car, didn't have a scratch on me. His car was totaled. And I asked the guy in the truck, why did he run into me? He said, I was up here waiting to make a turn on the exit. You hit me. So anyway, we got all the stuff worked out between myself and my other frat brother. Got him another car, went back. And
you didn't get arrested or anything?
No. Because if I did, I really don't remember it.
Yeah.
You know, all I remember, I was in a blackout.
Sure.
But that was the first sign. Okay, so I went back, kept on doing the same thing. That didn't get my attention. So I started working, trying to again, at a car dealership. Didn't work. Every time I get paid, it was the same cycle. But they said, if you don't go and get help, this was in '89, if you don't go and get help, you're going to lose your job. So immediately I'm like, okay, I'll go get help. You're right, I need help. Not because I thought I needed it, but I wanted to keep the job. So I went there into a treatment. It was Twin Oaks down in Dublin, Georgia, 1989, 28-day treatment program. And so I went there and I heard these people saying they was alcoholics and addicts and all this stuff. And I was like, man, what in the world have I got myself in? I'm not like these folk. Matter of fact, first couple of weeks in there, I was too busy trying to counsel them about their problems because I didn't share what mine was, you know, that attitude of indifference. But about that third week, I was beginning to hear some things that, I could be like they are, but it was too late because I had wasted 2 weeks.
Sure.
So they said, whatever you do, don't go back around the same people, places, and playgrounds doing the same thing. I knew it all. But me, I can handle this now. So I went right back around them same people saying, y'all look at me, y'all need to stop doing this stuff. It lasted exactly about 2 weeks. Started again. So now by this time, I wasn't working anymore. It was straight in the streets. And I called myself trying to sell crack cocaine and smoke it. Now you tell me how that works for somebody who's addicted to it.
I've told people for years that I was the world's worst drug dealer.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
I'm guessing you were too.
I was, because how could you sell something you're addicted to? It doesn't work, right? So anyway, I teamed up with these other guys, and this was like God's second time, because they said it's 3 things can happen: jails, institutions, and theft. So God's second warning to me was I got busted. You mentioned earlier about did I get a ticket or anything for that accident. I don't remember, but this was the first time that I had ever had any type of run-in with law.
Sure.
I had just got home that morning. My pattern was I sleep all day, go out at night, come in early the next morning.
At Mama's.
At Mama's.
So Mama was putting up with it because she loved her baby boy.
Yeah, she did not want to put me out. My sister was like, put him out, you know, because it was stressing her out. But she was the only one that was there until I went to jail that time. And I had never been there. They came to the house that morning, knocked on her door. I was back in my bed, asleep. So she come back to the room and she said, Roy, come out here. I'm like, what is going on? She said, what in the world are these detectives here at my house for? I said, I don't know. She said, well, you better come find out. So I get up, go to the door, and one of the guys who I went to high school with, John Durden, he was a detective at this time. He knew me. He said, Roy, we got you of the violation of the Georgia Controlled Substance Act. You sold crack cocaine to an undercover agent twice. I said, John, I didn't do it. He said, well, you got to go with us. And this was the first time that my mom didn't intervene and she couldn't do anything. So I went there along with the other two guys. They did a sweep, took us down. And sitting in the jailhouse that Thursday, I plea bargained with God. You know, God, if you get me out of this, I promise you, I'm going to do the right thing. Because I had tried treatment.
Pause on that for a minute. Go back. When you were in and out of Mom's house, sleeping all day, out all night, was she trying to get you to go to church with her?
She was.
Where was God in that whole scenario?
I would go, but I would go because I would use that as a way to get money from her. It was a way like, if you go to church, you know, I do this. Okay, I go to church, but I'm not going because of God. Because remember, at this time, I still had that animosity towards God.
So you were plea bargaining with Mom
And
before you started plea bargaining with God from the jail cell.
It was that manipulation.
Right.
You know, getting whatever. I was very selfish, self-centered. All I wanted to do was get whatever I can get for me. Matter of fact, Mom was the only one in the family that wanted to have anything else to do with me.
Everybody was done with
Everybody else was done. Because in anything of value, they'll move it from me.
Or chain it down when you're around.
Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That was it.
All right, so go back to the jail cell. So you start plea bargaining with God.
Plea bargain with God. God, if you get me out of this, I promise you, I'm going to turn my life around. So I got there in jail that Thursday night with the other two guys. That Monday night, about 7 o'clock, I got out on a $50,000 bond. They helped the other two guys because they had a history.
Sure.
I was petrified. So they let me out on a $50,000 bond that Monday at 7 o'clock.
Mama paid the bondsman?
No, my brother-in-law was a bondsman.
Your brother-in-law was a bondsman.
So I had master enablers. Okay, because she wanted me to sit in there.
Sure.
But he got me out. He was the bondsman. Never had to pay him back. So I got out at 7 o'clock that night. 7:30, guess what?
You was high.
Doing the same thing again. Forgot about what I had said to God. But this time I got with another dope dealer because the other two I was with, they didn't let him out. Okay, so then my mom came to me and said, what are you doing? You got a $50,000 bond hanging over your head, and you were doing the same thing. What are you doing? I didn't raise you like this, but I was in the grip. The devil had me. I was in his grip. And she told me this. That morning I came home, Ryan, from being out there, and she mentioned these words to me. She sat me in front of her. She said, Roy, I'm going to tell you something. I have done everything I possibly can to do for you. And I was high as a kite when she was talking to me that morning. But she said, you know what I done made a decision to do? I'm putting you back in the hands of the Lord. That was my reaction in the meet. I'm like, Mom, why you want to do that? You know, because I knew something was going to happen, but I didn't know what. But it didn't stop me until on October the 25th, 1991. The dope dealer who I was called myself trying to sell his dope for him had stole all his dope, taken all of his money, and he came to my mom's house, called me outside, had a .25 automatic handgun pointed to my temple, and said, Roy, I should kill you and go back and serve life in prison. He said, you've stolen dope from me, money and everything. And I wouldn't have a problem in doing that, serving time. He said, but you know what? He said, you have a serious problem. You need some help.
It's bad when the dope dealer tells you you got a dope problem.
You're exactly right. But that was like God saying, if you don't get it this time.
Right.
And this is it. And he uses the strangest people to get a message across sometimes.
Look at the Bible.
That's right.
From cover to cover. Use
Full
all
of
kinds
it.
of crazy people.
Full of it.
Yep.
So at this time, I told my sister, I called my mom, my sister, I said, y'all take me to detox. They like, my sister like, I'm not taking you nowhere because I had been crying wolves. I say, no, I'm serious. I need to go to detox. Now, granted, I still out on this bond, right? So they take me to detox, and I was only supposed to be in there 7 days. But I stayed in detox for 14 days because I didn't want to get back out because I was tired of that cycle.
Sure.
And so I stayed there long enough until my counselor, Miss Joyce Horton, I remember her. She's still living today. She was instrumental. She said, I found the place for you. I'm like, a place? I'm like, okay, where? She said, it's in Greenwood, South Carolina. Now, I'm in Georgia.
Right.
I did not even know Greenwood, South Carolina existed, right? So she said, yeah. I said, well, what is it? She said, it's a Christian rehabilitation home for drug addicts and alcoholics. I said, okay. So I called my mom. I said, Mom, they found the place for me to go. Now, God was already working because I was out on a $50,000 bond and wasn't supposed to leave the state.
Right.
Right? But they allowed me to. So I said, why don't you just come and pick me up, bring me home, let me go, to the barbershop, get my haircut, did all these things, and I'll be ready to go. She said, okay, good to hear that. So my brother came, picked me up, put me in the car, and started driving. I'm like, where are you going? I'm supposed to be going home because Mom said I can get my haircut and get all this. She said, nope. Mom got your suitcase packed, said,
do not pass go, do not
do
collect
not
$200
until you get to the front
right.
of the facility. And that's what he did. We did not even stop at a gas station until we got to that facility. And when I looked at the sign, I said, okay, a Christian rehabilitation home for drug addicts and alcoholics. So I got there and
met Mama Barnes.
Met Mama Barnes and Danny Barnes. Danny was living at that time.
Tell the people who Mama Barnes is.
Mama Barnes is a sweet Christian lady who, believe it or not, was married to Danny W. Barnes, who at the time was an atheist alcoholic, who shared the gospel, who prayed for him, and he accepted Christ and started Faith Home. And
they built this little Christian recovery program down in Greenwood.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And matter of fact, I got there as a resident. This was the second go round, right? This is in 91. And so while I was there, that Saturday they had chapel. So I was sitting in the chapel, and all of a sudden, after the preacher gave the word, he stood up and gave an invitation. And he said, it's a man in here who's been running. He said, you've been in car wrecks, you've been to jail, and you've almost lost your life. He said, won't you just surrender? And I'm sitting in there with all the men looking around like this, like, who told that man I was here?
Yeah.
But I didn't move, right? I didn't move. I'm like, man, this can't be true. But all that week, it was on me. It was on me. So, couldn't rest. Next Saturday, 2 weeks later came. It was like November the 7th. Another guest preacher came, volunteer, gave the message. Got up and said exactly the same thing.
Somebody in here who's been running.
Yes, the same thing. Been in car wrecks, been in jail, almost lost it. Won't you just surrender your life to the Lord? I got up from the back of that chapel, walked down to the front of the aisle, cried, and totally asked Jesus to forgive me and come into my heart.
Surrendered.
Totally.
Running.
Stop running. Stop hiding behind the mask.
Mm-hmm.
Got real naked before him and admitted it. And it wasn't like a lightning bolt or anything came down, but I felt the burden come off of me. And believe it or not, I was in the choir down there then after this happened.
Right.
And like a week later, because it was an 8-week program, a week later I was singing in the choir, and we were singing about, oh, how we love Jesus, and tears just started flowing down my eyes. And I started I don't know what was happening. And Danny Barnes was live, and I called down there, and I said, Mr. Barnes, I don't know what's going on, but something is happening. And he was like, Roy, I don't know what's going on either, but I can feel it coming through the phone. God was cleansing me. I was crying. So this is the key. I had been there. 8 weeks was up, and I didn't know what to do. So Danny Barnes himself created a position for me. He made me his personal secretary. So I stayed on.
Putting that business degree to work.
Yes, stayed on just for him and helping me too, because I was now doing the things I needed to do. I had the AADN, but I had that spiritual aspect.
I'm guessing the solicitor back home was like, keep him.
Yeah,
if he's doing good, just keep him.
This is what I'm getting ready to tell you. I got my first letter to go back to court after about 3 months up there, because I was still his assistant. But this time, I had surrendered to God. I know whatever's going to happen, I was being truthful. So he comes and I said, Mr. Barnes, I got to go to court. He said, okay, it's going to be okay. So I went to court, and John Durden, the detective, I got to the court. He saw me. He said, Roy, you look just like your old self. He said, have you decided what you're going to do? I like, yeah, John, I'm just going to plead guilty, because I did it. And I surrendered my life to the Lord, and I'm free. Whatever's going to happen, I'm ready to do it and get on with my life. He said, no, it's not time for us to try you yet. He said, you going back up to Faith Home. And when we get ready for you, we'll send for you. I'm like, okay. The other 2 guys that they had kept, that they never gave a bond to, went before the judge. That same day, the judge sentenced them 60 years apiece.
They're still in right now, I would assume.
Unless they got it changed in all these laws. But anyway, I go back to Faith Home, still there. 6 months. Now, I'm no longer Danny's assistant. I'm the manager at Faith Home. Came in as a resident. Now I'm the manager. Been 6 months sober, telling the guys about all that God is doing in my life. Get a second letter to go back to court 6 months later. Go to court, John sees me again. He says, it's still not time for us to try you, Roy. He said, we got so many other things on the docket. We know where you are. You keep doing what you're doing. We get ready for you. You'll go. And I said, okay. So I went back, still sharing what the Lord was doing in my life to men that was coming. And it was like, 3 months later, almost a year, I got a third letter. So I go in there, I talk to Mr. Barnes. I say, listen, I'm getting ready to go again. He said, well, let me share something with you, because he wrote a letter for me. He said, remember this, that whatever God's will in your life is, that's what it's going to be. If it's meant for you to go to jail, it might be somebody in prison that needs to hear about Jesus. Yeah, it's the mission
field at this point.
Yeah. He said, but if it's not, whatever his will is, that's what's going to happen. I said, okay. So I went to court, got there that morning. My mom, my brother and sister, myself sitting in the courtroom, 8 o'clock that morning.
Everybody's talking to Roy now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because they're seeing the difference.
Sure.
And not just verbally, but living it.
Right.
The change. Everybody. That's a good way to put it. I never thought about that. But yes, and we got to 8 o'clock that morning. That judge was giving out time left and right for people who was coming before him with drug charges. We sat there from that morning till 4 o'clock in the evening. We were the only family left in the courtroom. And although it had been about a year, I told my mom, I said, Mom, I'm going to get ready to go to the bathroom. She's still like, wait a minute. She said, you better not go anywhere because you know you got to go. I said, I'll be back. And I never forget it, Ryan. I went to that bathroom and I said, Lord, I know this is it. I said, I know I got to go before this judge. But this judge only has the amount of authority that you allow him to have. Mm-hmm. I say, if it's your will for me to be locked up and put in prison, I'm okay with it. because it might be somebody in there that needs to hear about you. I said, but if it's not your will, whatever your will is for me in my life from this point on, show me. Came back out, sat down, wasn't sitting down 5 minutes before the judge called me before him. Said, Mr. Leroy Williams approached the bench. I'm like, oh man, you know that fear. He said, we got you of the violation of the Georgia Controlled Substance Act. You selling crack cocaine to undercover agents. How do you plead? I said, I'm guilty, Your Honor. He said, do you realize that by pleading guilty, that you can receive a sentence of 30 years on each account for a maximum amount of 60 years in prison? I'm like, yes, sir. He said, why are you doing this? Has anybody promised you anything? I say, no, sir. You know, I did the crime. I'm trying to live the right way, be honest. And I want to get whatever's coming and go on with my life because I'm free now. He said, okay. So he asked the district attorney, Mr. DA, what kind of recommendations you make for this man? And granted, I hadn't even talked to him. He said,
talked to the detective, though.
Right.
And that detective probably done talk to the district attorney.
Behind the scenes, not me knowing anything.
Sure.
So he said, Your Honor, I recommend that he be fined and put on probation. And I know that this is a light sentence compared to what we did the other two who was with him. But the only reason why I'm making this recommendation is because we can see a change in his life, and he's trying to do something without the courts forcing him to do it.
Sure.
So the judge looked at me and said, just because he makes that recommendation, it's up to the court to make the final decision. I said, yes, sir, I understand that, Your Honor. By this time, they had just assigned me a public defender that morning that talked to me for a little while. So when the DA got finished, the public defender stood up and started talking on my behalf and, you know, saying things about me like he been knowing me all his life. I'm like, how did he know all this stuff? Because I just gave him a minimum stuff, which it was a small town.
Right.
And so he started speaking up like he had been knowing me all his life. And, of course, I gave him the letter that Danny had written for me. And when that was finished, that was the second thing. Out of the blue, the sheriff and the detective who busted me stood up and started speaking on my behalf. And I'm seeing all these things happen in front of me and realized that I didn't have anything to do with it. Mm-hmm. So when he got finished, the judge say, approach the bench. He said, let me tell you, this is probably the first and 99.9% the last time something like this happened in my courtroom. He said, you got the confidence of the DA who should be prosecuting you, speaking up for your behalf, and you got a public defender that I know was just assigned for you this morning, speaking up like he's been knowing you all your life. Mm-hmm. And if that's not enough, you even got the sheriff and the detective that busted you to speak up. He said, if I lock you and put you away for 60 years, he said, I'll be doing you an injustice. He said, so I tell you what I'm going to do. He said, I'm going to fine you and put you on probation. He said, but let me tell you something. He said, I want to tell you one thing before you leave my courtroom, and that is the Lord has something for you to do. He said, you are free to leave my courtroom, but it's one thing I want you to know before you go. And Ryan, I wouldn't know what that judge looked like today if I saw him. Mm-hmm. He said these words, God has something for you to do. You got a story you can share with somebody. My prayers are with you.
So that ultimately led you to the pastorate.
Right.
How'd you wind up at Miracle Hill?
Well, I wind up at Miracle Hill because I pastored down in Clemson from 2002 to 2013. 2010, while I was still pastoring, I had another chaplain who approached me who was going through ad life at the hospital. My wife at that time was the director over Marshall Pickens at Greenville Hospital System. So he was going through the chaplain. So he asked her if I wanted to be a chaplain. I'm like, well, I'm good as a pastor because I had went to Erskine, got my MDiv and DBN in Erskine. And so I said, I'm good. I interviewed, got a job as a chaplain. So from 2010 to 2013, I was trying to do both. And again, I said, Lord, I can't do this. And it wasn't because the congregation was complaining or the family that I was serving as a hospice chaplain was complaining, but it was because I wasn't giving 100% of myself to either one of them. So I prayed, and I'm like, God, what do you want me to do? And I thought about that relationship I had built with the church and children that was now, 11 years old, that was growing. How would they feel like I'm abandoning them, I'm just leaving them, because I know what it felt like. And so I was struggling with that. And so I was praying. I said, please, God, let me know. Because I wasn't going to do anything until I got the permission from him to do it. Sure. But I know I couldn't keep. And it was one Sunday I was sitting in the pastor study, still struggling with it. And just as clear as day, the Holy Spirit said, they're going to be okay. They never were yours. They've always been mine.
Amen. That'll preach right there too, really.
And so I went to the board and shared with them. I said, the Lord is getting ready to move me somewhere else. And I had been there. Church was growing. And the congregation couldn't believe it. Now, we didn't have any major problem, but we had problems, because wherever you have people, you have problems, because they're synonymous.
The hardest part about ministry is all the people.
That's exactly right. If they weren't there, we wouldn't have any problem.
That's right.
But I told them, I said, the Lord is releasing me. They couldn't believe it, because the church was actually growing. And I shared with them, I said, it doesn't take much faith when things are going bad. The test comes when the Lord said, I have another assignment for you.
Because the people are also the best part about ministry.
Yes, it is. It's like a double negative. But so anyway, I went on, started doing the chaplaincy for 10 years, up until 2020, because my wife, in December 2019, she had open heart surgery, triple bypass surgery, unexpected. And so they worked with me. I had some time off and went back to work. But then she recuperated, had to take care of her. She had been with me all through ministry. So now it was my time to take care of her. But when she got better, I went back to work. Then in December 2020, a year later, she got COVID. And she was hospitalized for 3 days, but she came home. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I'm sitting at home, and she saw an ad in the paper about a counselor from Miracle Hill. And she said, honey, I know where your heart is. She said, why don't you just go and apply for that? I'm like, hon, are you tired of me being home or something? You trying to get rid of me? She said, no, but I know your ministry. We'll be okay. So I went and applied, and next thing you know, I was at Miracle Hill. And the thing about it, Ryan, is I know without a shadow of a doubt, it's full circle. Because I say that because God took me from being homelessness, cleaned me up, trusted me with the ability to share his gospel with other people, to be real, don't have to wear a mask anymore.
Right.
And not only that, but these guests that I have the privilege every day of sitting in front of is a constant reminder of where I was, 30 years ago.
Just other Roys, right? I feel the exact same way.
That's it.
I'm no better than,
right.
I have no more value than,
right.
I'm just at a different place in the journey, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The same way.
Exactly. And so not only does it give me an opportunity to see Roy every day, but my prayer is that it gives them hope to see what God can do through them, through me.
So let's go. That's an amazing story. God is good.
All the time.
All the time. So let's go back and just talk a little bit about this idea of being the double-minded man.
Yeah.
Right? So you were the double-minded man,
yes.
unstable in all of his ways.
Yes.
Why do you think that you started out hiding your problems? Was
Well,
that part of who you were? Did you learn that?
Well, I think the majority reason of doing that was because of pride and not really wanting people to know the real Roy. In other words, I created this perception that I gave people. And in giving that perception, I created the image to try to live up to that perception.
Sure.
But then I had to deal with the reality. I didn't want anybody to see the reality.
So how does hiding our issues, how does that hurt you? How does that hurt those around you?
Well, it doesn't allow me to be who I am. It's almost hypocritical. It's fake. I was pretending to be something that I didn't even intend to be. And I was in bondage, trying to be somebody who I'm really not, knowing a whole while that God knew who I was. But I was masking it for reputation.
Sure.
Don't want to embarrass the family, the name, all of that stuff.
So then you finally out yourself with your mom.
Right.
And so she knew something was wrong, but I'm guessing you still weren't real honest about what was wrong.
I wasn't. But she knew because, like I said, I had a praying mother, And when she mentioned to me about turning me over unto the hands of the Lord, I knew something was happening. But she saw me change. And my first anniversary at the church, I came and she told me, because I went home, it's because she passed the second year of my pastoral, but she saw the change. Mm-hmm. But that December when I went home before she passed, she sat me down and she said, Roy, let me tell you something. This was December before she passed, February the 29th the following year. She said, you know what one of the hardest things was for me to do? I'm like, no, because we was talking now. She said, the hardest thing for me to do was to let you go. Because you was my baby boy. I did not know what was going to happen. She said, but when I let you go, I prayed and asked the Lord, whatever you do, I'm trusting you with him. She said, I didn't know how it was going to turn out, but I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah, and there's a whole lesson in there for her on that,
Yes.
About not enabling and letting God be God.
Right.
So there's both a biblical principle and a recovery principle that says that our secrets keep us sick.
Yes.
So what would you say to the person who's still hiding, still struggling, but doing it alone?
Well, what I would say to that individual is, first and foremost, God knows it. Mm-hmm. He knows everything about us. And yet, because he created us, and who knows more about us than the one who created us? And yet, the devil will have them thinking, just like he had me thinking, that God doesn't care. He doesn't amount to anything. So we go on trying to hide. But what I would share is, come clean with God. Then you can become clean with yourself. Then you can be released from that bondage and not worrying about, although it matters what people perception is, but the reality is, what does God see in you? And according to him, we are wonderful.
So I wasn't planning on asking this question, but I'm going to ask it because I think it's an interesting question. What do you think keeps us in more bondage, the drugs or the secrets?
The secrets. The drugs, for me, the drugs was a symptom of a deeper problem.
Right.
That wasn't the problem. But I had a lot of hidden things on the inside that I didn't want to talk about, that I didn't want to express because of image and perception and pride. And because of not dealing with those things, being secret, that's what caused me to get actively heavy into the drugs. But had I dealt with those on the onset, it's a possibility where I wouldn't have to rely so much on the drug. And I share this with the guests at the mission. I said, Jesus said, and I said, it's ironic that he used this statement, but I said, he said you can't put new wine in an old wineskin because it'll burst, right? And I said, I really didn't understand that. I said, but then I understood. He said, because I couldn't put anything new in me until I emptied that oldness.
Yeah, amen to that. So through the magic of technology and God's sovereignty, I believe there's somebody that's going to listen to this that knows Miss Joyce Horton.
Yes.
What would you say to Joyce?
Joyce, thank you. Because Joyce, I'm telling you, the whole while, Ryan, I was doing this, it was Christians around me.
Right.
Angels who was praying for me. Joyce, she's a pastor's wife at the church in Swainsboro now. Every time she sees me, you know, she sees the handiwork of God because she was praying for me. I'm going to tell you this, back up and tell you this. When I was out there, it was a place I had to walk to go and get the drugs that I needed. And it was this Christian lady she never moved from that area. She would always sit on her front porch. She knew me. And every time I would try to go another way to keep from seeing her on her porch, because every time I would walk by her porch and she would see me, she would say these words, Roy, God loves you. Right before I go and get the dope. Every time. And I just like, man, and it started bothering me, you know. But Joyce Horton was one who prayed with me along with my mother. I mean, it was just so many people whose prayers was answered. And you know what's remarkable? When I started pastoring, what was so remarkable was the fact that I had an opportunity several times to go back to that area, to a church where I used to go and buy the drugs and alcohol from, to do revivals. And several souls came to the Lord, not on my account,
Right.
because they remembered how I was, but they also saw the work of what God did. And by me just showing back up, God sent me right back to those same areas. And many people gave their life to the Lord because of my witness, because of him using me as a witness. I really didn't even have to preach. They just saw it. But just being able to share what he's done for me, many gave their life to the Lord. And I give him praise for that.
Amen. And we are thankful that you came in and shared your story with us today. Kind of you. And I think there's a huge lesson in there about not hiding who we are.
Right.
Even the most broken aspects of it, right?
Right.
So would you do us the honor of closing us in prayer and pray for those who are out there hiding this junk in their life right now and need to get honest with God and honest with others?
I sure will. Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you so much for being a loving, caring, compassionate God. And Father, one who always knows all about his children. We thank you for your love. We thank you for your grace, and we thank you for your mercy. And Father, our prayer right now is that someone who may be listening will find themselves the peace and comfort that only comes from you. God, whatever it is that's causing someone to hide behind whatever trauma, whatever pain they may exist, God, our prayer right now is that they can feel the compassion and the love that you have for them, that they can remove the mask and they can come before you naked with everything, knowing that the shed blood of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, can cleanse us from all our unrighteousness. God, I pray that whatever traumatic experience, whatever pain, whatever it may be, that's keeping someone in secret, that they can cast them on your shoulders and bring them from the altars of their heart to you. We know that you're able, because, God, you can do exceedingly and abundantly above that we ask or think. So, God, our prayer is that someone will come out of the darkness unto the marvelous light of your Son, Jesus Christ, and that you will receive all the honor, glory, and praise for it. In Jesus' name we pray and ask. Amen.
Amen. Thanks for coming in, and thanks for sharing your life and your journey and your ministry at Miracle Hill each day.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm glad to be a part of it.
All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye, everybody.